Hey guys, it's Sajid Dan One again here, back again for another new video for you guys, and today I'm back with another recent pickups video. Today we're going to be covering everything I picked up in the month of April, and without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, and this time let's do something a little bit different. Instead of saving the big purchase for last as typical, what do you say we just start off with one of the big purchases for the month for me? And this was a long time coming for me. This was like a much needed upgrade, but I did pick up a new 3DS, Nintendo 3DS XL. I'm really happy about this because I really have been needing an upgrade for a while. I went from having the original DS, like the original silver model, the fat one, to upgrading from there to a regular 3DS, the aqua blue one. So I've never really actually owned any DS XL ever. So this was like a much needed upgrade, and I do have to say I'm really happy. It's just a really awesome console. And since we just checked out the new 3DS XL, what do you say we check out some recent 3DS pickups for me, including one of the first new Nintendo 3DS exclusive titles, and that is of course Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, exclusive to the new Nintendo 3DS. I haven't opened this yet, and I probably won't open it for a while, to be honest. I'm one of those where I leave my games sealed until I get around to playing them. But to be honest, I don't really feel like playing Xenoblade again right away, because I'm one of those when it comes to RPGs, I love doing multiple playthroughs of RPGs, but I like waiting a while, and I'm talking multiple years until I do another playthrough. And I beat Xenoblade when it came out. It was a really long game, it was 80 plus hours, and I feel like waiting longer until I play Xenoblade again. And I do that in the hopes that I can maybe forget stuff, and maybe it'll become somewhat new again to me. But I definitely want to check this out because I'm really interested to see how the 3D looks in particular, and that's one thing I'm really happy with the new Nintendo 3DS XL is the face tracking 3D does really work pretty good, so that's really cool. But when I feel like doing a second playthrough of Xenoblade, I'll definitely check it out this way, and really happy to pick it up. I had to double dip too because Xenoblade's one of my favorite RPGs of last gen, so I had to have this. And the next game we have here is an interesting crossover / spin-off game that I was really interested in, and that is Etrian Mystery Dungeon for the 3DS. I was really looking forward to this. I'm a really big Etrian Odyssey fan, and I really enjoy the Mystery Dungeon games. So this is a kind of crossover / spin-off. It takes Etrian Odyssey and the formula of Etrian Odyssey, like classes and the overall kind of presentation and aesthetic and music of it, and mixes it in with Spike Chunsoft's really long-running roguelike RPG series called Mystery Dungeon. And Mystery Dungeon might sound familiar because it's a series that gets tied to other popular series. More notable recently would be Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, but there's stuff like Shyren the Wanderer, and even Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy had Mystery Dungeon games. So it's like Etrian Odyssey style and all that, and a lot of mechanics from Etrian Odyssey mixed in with a really traditional roguelike. But if you want to learn more about this game in depth, I just put up a Dan Chat episode actually, so I'll go ahead and plug that. You can check that out to learn more about this game in depth. But rest assured, I think it's a really fun, kind of simplistic and a little bit on the easier side. Not so much simplistic, but more on the easier side. It's definitely a much easier roguelike, so if you're expecting a really challenging roguelike, you won't probably get that here, but I'm enjoying it because it's really nice to play a really good roguelike without being super frustrated all the time from dying. So definitely easier, but I'm definitely enjoying it. Next we have one of the very first really niche kind of JRPGs to come out exclusively on the PS4, and this is Idea Factory's first PS4 limited edition. It was a game I was interested in, but definitely have a lot of mixed feelings, and that is Omega Quintet for the PS4. This is a limited edition. Of course I've done an unboxing on this, so you can check that out if you want to learn more about the contents. There's a lot of great goodies in here. Retail for $74.99. It was exclusive to Idea Factory's web store. But let's move on to the game. As for the game itself, Omega Quintet for the PS4, it is developed by a subsidiary of Compile Heart called Galapagos RPG, a more recently made Fairy Fencer app, which I actually really enjoyed Fairy Fencer app, but it has that Compile Heart kind of feeling in here. And it's actually a turn-based RPG, which I didn't know going into it, so I actually really like that. That's one thing I really love about this game, is I really love the gameplay. It's just a really fun turn-based RPG. The turn-based mechanic is really simplistic yet really in-depth. So it has a lot of depth. There's this row mechanic, you can do harmonics, link together other scales, there's various chain scales and combo scales, stuff like that. Really in depth and just really a lot of fun, so I really enjoy the turn-based gameplay. And I do I don't know if it's because this is a PS4 game, but Compile Heart RPGs in the past, I've always felt like their dungeons were really small, they were just small dungeons, and I never really got that sense I was really exploring a big world or a big dungeon. And in here the dungeons are gigantic, they're huge, they're broken down into multiple areas where you can warp through, and it really does feel like I'm exploring a gigantic environment. So I really like that, but I do have some negatives here, and what's causing a lot of my mixed feelings. But like I mentioned before, I do really have some mixed feelings about Omega Quintet, and a lot of my mixed feelings stem from, I think, number one, the story. I think the writing is just so underwhelmingly written. Like, it's just not even funny. It's just so poorly written. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm all for cute stuff and cute moe stuff. I use more emotes than a Japanese schoolgirl, but like, cuteness can only get you so far, man. And this game relies way too heavy on the cuteness factor. It's just to the point where it's just not interesting to me. I don't care about any of the girls or any of the characters. I wish I also had more context to the story. This game does a really poor job fleshing out the world and fleshing out the context for the enemies and stuff like that. Like, I don't get it. It's just really vague. And it's a lot of idle banter. But that aside, one of my other kind of negatives about this game is it's one of those games that tries to do too much. Like, there's so many mechanics going on in this game that it's a little bit of a detriment to it, because when you introduce so many mechanics in a game, that can sometimes prevent you from getting to a certain quality standard for, you know, certain mechanics, because you're trying to introduce so much stuff that, like, all these mechanics don't get to a certain quality standard. And that happens in this game. There's just so many mechanics that nothing really gets to like a really great standard of quality. And the other part is the idle sim. I mentioned this was like JRPG, but part idle sim, and that's actually not true. It's just a JRPG. The idle sim part, I wish had more context and consequence within the game. All it is like, it's in depth. Like, it's really in depth. It's like a video creation tool, almost like Idolmaster. It's like super in depth, but it just serves the purpose of like something fun to do extra. It's just like a fun little distraction and serves no real purpose to the actual story or like an integral role in the gameplay. So that's unfortunate. But I am still enjoying Omega Quintet. I'm still working my way through it. I put in about 20 plus hours, and like I mentioned before, I think I'm having the most fun with the gameplay in the turn-based RPG and exploring these big dungeons. Okay, and next is a game I've actually been wanting to pick up for quite a while, but I wanted to pay at least under $20 for it, and I finally got it for under $20. It took a while to find it for that price, but I picked up Akiba's Trip, or Akiba's Trip, Undead and Undressed. Very clever name. And this is a pretty more well-known game because it has, it's a really awkward premise when you think about it. Like, let's be honest, it's a really awkward premise, but leave it to Japan to come up with a clever way around that awkward premise. And this is essentially a beat-em up that takes place in a really accurate representation of Akihabara, and Akihabara is one of the most popular districts in Japan. And that's one of my favorite parts about this game. I love this game mainly due to the fact that it felt really cool to kind of explore a really almost faithful representation of Akihabara. I mean, it's really interesting in here that you can get like advertisements for like real life stores that exist in Akihabara, and like when the game's loading, there's like advertisements for real life stores in Akihabara. And I think from a licensing point of view, this game is super interesting because there's a lot of copyrighted material in here that they were able to get, and I'm really curious how they went about that. But that being said, like I mentioned before, this is a beat 'em up. It has a really awkward premise, but they found a clever way around that. So essentially, there's like these vampires, they call them synthesizers, and the only way to kind of kill these synthesizers, which are like powerful humans and stuff like that, is to expose them to sunlight, because, you know, vampires don't like sunlight. So in order to expose them to sunlight, of course you have to rip off their clothes. So that's the big mechanic with this game, is you have to rip off these people's clothes, these synthesizers, to expose them, while kind of, you know, with the premise trying to figure out the kind of mystery behind the synthesizers, why they exist and all that, and trying to figure out the context behind that. But the gameplay revolves around targeting certain areas of clothing, so like the head, the top, the bottom, and then once you weaken those by, you know, fighting with various weapons and stuff like that, once you weaken those, you can attempt to rip off clothes, and then it has some other mechanics in there where you can do like chain stripping and stuff like that. But it's kind of like not that in depth. Like, to be honest, it's only just like those three mechanics, and there's no like skills to learn or like, you know, combos to do like most beat 'em ups. So it's very simplistic in that regards, and it could be a bit repetitive, to be honest. It kind of has RPG mechanics where you level up, you can change equipment and stuff like that, and power up equipment and stuff like that. But I love it because it's just such a fun game to play, and it's just so fun being in the setting and all that, and it's an incredibly funny game. Like, it is so hilarious. Like, some of the dialogue choices had me laughing out loud. It was ridiculous, but at the end of the day, I still really enjoyed Akiba's Trip. I actually got all the endings, so I really liked it a lot, obviously. I was having a lot of fun with it, and I think that's the thing. It's a simplistic, kind of awkward premise, but it's a simplistic, fun beat 'em up that's just so silly and just the epitome of a silly kind of Japanese game. But really enjoyed Akiba's Trip. And next I have 2 Konami published DS games here, back when Konami actually took chances on games. The first is a game I've been wanting to check out, and it's a series on the DS. There were 3 of them on the DS, and that is Lost in Blue, the first Lost in Blue. This is a game that always looked so interesting to me. I always thought the premise was so interesting. This is actually a continuation of Survival Kids, which is another Konami series. Very, very similar in the kind of build of the game. But this is essentially a survival game. I thought the premise of, like, you know, trying to survive on a deserted island was so interesting. It uses a touchscreen and the mic a lot too. But really interested in checking this out, and if I like it, I'll probably try and track down the rest of them. And next is a mystery adventure game. I've been on a kind of mystery adventure game kick, and I've been wanting this game for quite a while. I've been trying to track it down. It keeps going up and up in price, and I finally found it for a good price. And that is Time Hollow on the DS. This is a really interesting looking mystery adventure game. Heard it's a bit on the short side, but definitely interested in checking this out. And I love me some mystery adventures, and a really great platform for mystery adventures when you think about it, the DS. And finally, to end off this recent pickups, I have some flea market finds to share with you guys. I love going to the flea market. It's a great chance to try and find some retro games for good prices. First game I have here is a complete in-box Sega Genesis game, actually, and that is Might and Magic Gates to Another World. This is actually Might and Magic 2 in the series, and this is a classic first-person dungeon crawl, and the Might and Magic series is just a really classic RPG series. This is back in the day when you had to spend a lot of time re-rolling stats until you got the stats you wanted, or the stats required to get certain classes, and you re-roll stats for a long time only to get your butt kicked in the first kind of fight you come across. But these were challenging, man. These were so challenging back then. This is back when you needed graph paper and all that, but it's just really classic, and it's just great to see and play these kind of classic first-person dungeon crawlers and see the kind of evolution of the genre. And next I had 2 NES games, and one of them is one I've been on the lookout for because I've been hearing a lot about it, and I thought it was a really interesting game. So I was really happy to pick up Top Secret Episode Go-Go 13. This is based on a really dark manga series, actually. And that's the thing about this game, it's like so interesting because it has a lot of kind of dark motifs, and just motifs you did not find in like NES games back then, or motifs that were definitely considered really taboo back then, which are nothing nowadays in the grand scheme of things, but back then were really taboo. Stuff like sexual content and graphic violence and even smoking in here. It's just like there's a lot of kind of more mature motifs for this kind of game. It's interesting in the regards that it blends a lot of different genres. There's like first person dungeon kind of segments when you're in the like bases and stuff like that. It's like side scrolling, you know, action game, and then like a kind of on rails like shooter type of stuff. Like it's a mix of like all kinds of genres. The story presentation is like the brilliant part of this game. I love how it presents itself with the story and the character design and all that. Really, really great. The visual design within like the actual game itself isn't as good. It's very generic, but just a really interesting game, really quality, really interesting story too. Like just a really interesting story. Really interesting game in the overall kind of context of like surprising that this was able to get past there with all the kind of motifs in here back then. But really cool game. I actually really like Go-Go 13. And lastly, we have a classic vertical scrolling shooter by SNK, and that is of course Alpha Mission. Not a whole lot to say about Alpha Mission, but it's a really quality vertical scrolling shooter by SNK, really classic game. It's a space shooter, so it's set in like space and all that, and like a lot of shooters on the NES, you had like 2 different shots. You have like one shot to hit normal enemies and then another shot to hit enemies that were on like a lower plane. But just a really quality game, and I love SNK, kind of the early SNK kind of games, really great. Okay guys, and that'll pretty much do it for my recent pickups for the month of April. Definitely a busy month. I picked up a lot of stuff, and it was a really fun month, and I got a big purchase with the 3DS XL. Really happy to have that. But as always, be sure to let me know what you guys picked up recently in the month of April, what you guys are playing recently, or what you guys are even looking forward to in the coming months. But as always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I also apologize for the lighting. The sun just kept going, you know, in and out of clouds and stuff like that. So it was cloudy, sunny, cloudy, sunny. But anyways, thank you for watching so much, and please take it easy, guys. Bye.